Welcome back to the Processing Podcast with Mary and Sophie, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you guys haven't listened to our episode from last week, we did a full breakdown of all that went on at Sophie's engagement party. So go and give that a listen. It's Saturday at the time of recording this, and I'm very happy it's the weekend. I'm going to the state fair today here in Minnesota, and I'm going to eat my weight in food, and it's going to be bad food. Like
Oh,
there's so many combinations this year of sweet and spicy that it's going to be crazy.
is there like a particular food that you're excited for specifically?
Yeah, there's these beer, well, there's some crazy things. There's like slushy beer and
That sounds like that would, well, maybe not. It makes it just like cold, but
it's
oh,
odd. And it's like blue grain belt or whatever, grain belt blue. So it's a really crappy beer. There's these onion rings that I'm really excited about. Lots of breakfast food, like breakfast gnocchi, things like
oh,
that I'm interested in trying. There's a cotton candy milkshake. Um,
that sounds like a lot.
these weird varieties of crepes. Yeah, I'm excited. So I'm creating my list like this morning, just writing down the list of things I want to try. But aside from that, how have you been? I'm curious to know in your profession what life is like this time of year because
Yeah,
everyone has different busy seasons. So in your
yeah.
world, what is, the entrance to fall like?
Fall is always crazy for us. So essentially, there's two reasons for this. The first reason is because anybody who's on like a what is it, July to June fiscal year, they just get their budgets and so they're able to sign new work with us. But also people who are on January to December fiscal years have to spend their money before the end of the year.
Mm.
So we have like a convergence of people who are getting money and like people who have to spend it. So there's always a lot of work. And plus, holidays spark all kinds of campaigns for advertising and um, people are just trying to get things done before the holidays. So it's always just a crazy time of year for us. Luckily, we just hired a couple new people. Thank God. We really needed them. But it's just been insane. Last weekend was by far the craziest weekend I've had in a long time. Um, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm very grateful for my job. It gives me a very consistent 40-hour work week. I Monday through Friday very rarely go over my hours. I never have to work on weekends. But last weekend we had a client that had a community event that we planned on Saturday, no, Sunday. So I had my cousin's baby shower in Vegas. So I had to fly out to Vegas Friday afternoon from LAX, which in and of itself is a mission. Land in Vegas, stay the night, go to the baby shower the next day, leave from the baby shower to the airport, fly in, and like get home at 10 p.m. and then wake up at 6 a.m. the next day to go and do this event on Sunday. And luckily, it was just an event to welcome the community to their facility and give them free tacos and free ice cream and stuff like that. So it was easy to be there, but like all the setup and waking up early and staffing it after having just been in Vegas was a lot.
I mean, we aren't used to like flying somewhere the day of and flying home the day of. Wait, did you fly into Vegas Friday or Saturday?
Friday. So it was a
Okay,
24-hour
gotcha.
turnaround. Yeah.
I mean, it's always tough, especially when you go to an event and you have to leave to the airport after. Like you can't really fully release and have fun because you're like,
Yeah.
I need to be on point to get back in time because I have a big early morning work event. That
Yeah.
situation happens with me so much. Like I know exactly how you felt last weekend because I work on the weekends. So I over extend myself as best as I can to accommodate personal life relationships and obviously work. So it's like early morning, go do this, for example, like brunch at my boyfriend's parents' house, and then, be ready to get back and go to work right after. So
That is wild to me that
it's a
that's
lot.
normal for you
Yeah.
because I mean, I just in my mind, I always know I'm like, Mary's just has a different lifestyle. She's just go going. Like I can't ever compare my lifestyle to Mary's because mine is so consistent.
Mhm.
Um, I could not like yes, last weekend I was just drained. After the event, I got home at like 4 and I sat on the couch and ordered pad thai and didn't move again until like 10 p.m. I was exhausted. So I just
It
can't
is
imagine.
100% very exhausting. But it looked like fun. I saw the Instagram stories and pictures from your cousin's
Yeah,
engagement party or bridal shower.
her bridal
And
shower.
it
Yeah.
looked like so much fun. I love that I
Yeah.
know your family now because before I
Yeah.
didn't know any of that side. Now I get it. So this time of year in my world is insanely busy too.
Mhm.
Because once football season starts, like anyone you hear that works in sports, you'll always hear them say, once football begins, you are working constantly for the next 5 to 6 months.
Oh my
And it's
gosh.
actually nice because a lot of people in the sports business are talking about it now. All the sports podcasts I listen to, they're starting to communicate like this time of year is so fun because we get football back, but it's also a little bit anxiety inducing because you know that for this next stretch of time you're going to be working constantly. But yeah, I mean, before the season, getting a bunch of previews done. Vikings training camp was so fun to attend and report on all the storylines. The Vikings had a joint practice with the 49ers and their new starting quarterback this year, who they drafted in 2021, is going to be their starter. And he's from the area that I cover. So all of the storylines regarding that, it's so great, but like the longest days and it's intense. And then the season hasn't even started yet. So next week, football season starts at the high school, college, and the week thereafter, the NFL season starts. And it's going to be crazy.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
games in every direction you look. There's games going on. There's stories to talk about. So I'm kind of going through that right now. It's a mixture of excitement and a little bit of, oh man, like the summer wasn't that chill. I don't feel
You didn't get,
totally released
yeah.
from the last couple months.
Oh no.
But it's the
Well,
older you get, like last year, the year before, I never thought about, oh, I'm gonna have to. I never had that perspective. I just like, oh, football is back, and then I'm working. Like exciting. So
yeah.
getting
Well,
older, your
as you get
perspective changes.
older, you have more obligations
Mhm.
too. And, you have more of a personal life. And when you're young, I mean, you don't have any obligations. So you're just like able to do whatever you need to do. But yeah,
Exactly.
I commend you for but I feel like you actually really enjoy it. So that is good because if you were doing something this rigorous and not enjoying it, that would just be terrible. But I feel like from you, you're
Absolutely.
actually really
Yeah,
enjoying it.
for sure. And hopefully this resonates with any of our listeners that are outside of the West Coast. But this is the first season since I've moved to the Midwest that I also have a bit of an anxious feeling around the winter coming.
Mm,
Before this, I never did because I was still fresh off my mindset of living in heat year round in Southern California. And I was so eager to experience seasons. And this is the first year where I'm like, there's more implications that come with winter because there's another busy sports season and it's not as simple as just the weather and goals that you have in your own personal life, achieving things, etc. But yeah, this is the first time I moved to the Midwest in 2015 from college to go to
mhm.
Iowa State. experienced all 4 seasons, worked in the professional world in Minnesota for going on 3 years. And I can officially say, or maybe going on 4 years, I can officially say that I have weather anxiety towards the winter.
Oh my gosh, that's when you know you're like a local now. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just crazy the different perspective changes you have year to year. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. In the colder times, I'll just give a little bit of context. Like the colder times are cold um during the best part of the year. So December, January, that's when you love the snow. It's so great. But it's when it extends February, April, March.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Did I say that
Out of
in
order.
order? I said that out of order, right?
February, March, April.
February, March, April. That's when it's like, okay, the spring doesn't feel like spring and it's just cold.
Mm.
So, anyways, I'm just being honest. I've always been as adaptable as I can be, and I've, in a way prided myself on that, but things change.
You get more
So,
particular as you get older too, I
yeah.
feel.
So
But
definitely busy time of year for both of us. Good to know. I think
yeah.
that's kind of the tune for everyone. Once the
Yeah.
summer goes away, the vacation comes to an end, and
It's a
the
grind.
ability to take vacation, I should say. There's no true vacation in the working world, but the grind truly begins.
Hmm.
So we have a lot to talk about on this week's episode. Get excited. We're going to end the show like we typically do with the wedding conversation. I've officially started planning the bachelorette party that gets underway in February of 2023. And then Sophie is also trying to finalize details that we'll get into. And before that, we have lots of topics to break down. We're not going to just have a clear cut hot topic segment this week where we each bring, one really big thing that we're following into the conversation. We're just going to rattle through a bunch of things that have been going on this week because not only is television ramping up, but people in our society that we've looked up to are starting to speak their minds and fight for what they believe in and stand up for themselves. So let's get to it. First, I have a very concerning issue with Starbucks that
Oh
I haven't heard
no.
anyone talk about, but I would say, I'm above average in terms of what I pay attention to with what Starbucks has going on with their coffee drinks, what type of products they use, because I try to replicate them at home a lot. That's just kind of always been of interest to me. And I think it was maybe last year or 2 years ago, Starbucks introduced a new oat milk, and it was a specific oat milk brand from Oatly, and it's very popular overseas, like in Sweden, Europe, essentially. And it came to the US, but the production was a lot slower.
Mm.
So overseas, their grocery stores, I saw pictures and videos online of their entrances to the grocery stores of being all of this specific oat milk. And what makes it special is it has a thicker consistency, a bit of an oatier aftertaste, and it just really complements certain coffee drinks well, like chai, like I'm sure you heard of the brown sugar oat milk shake and espresso. All of these drinks, it just has a good alt taste as well as being a dairy alternative. So once it made its way to the US, there were a lot of oat milk shortages because they couldn't, not only because of COVID, supply chain, but just production, trying to keep up with the production with how popular it got because it's such great oat milk.
Mhm.
So when I started to do research onto what I explained, what type of oat milk it was, because I could taste it going and wanted to have it at home, I started ordering it by the bulk. And of course, it's more expensive online. Like it's almost $5 a carton and it's not that big. And,
Wow.
my mom would get it for me she got me on 2 separate occasions these, like I guess, shipping containers of them. Only, 12 come in it. They're not that big.
Mhm.
I've ordered them, through Amazon, but it's through a certain supplier. And for the past 2 months, I have, and this is almost a year later since really being or consuming that oat milk on a high volume scale. For the past month, I've been getting these emails from the FDA about how that oat milk, a previous purchase that we see that you made has a new FDA warning. And I guess I should pull up that FDA warning. But essentially, there's these like foodborne illnesses in the oat milk. Let's see. Let me
What?
pull it up. Let me pull it up.
How serious are
I'm not going
they?
to be able to. I'm going to do my best to pronounce these things. It's going to be a fail. So, um, company announcement, and this is attached to, you know, the FDA notification I got because they were able to locate everyone that's bought in this oat milk. But it's called Lions Magnus expands voluntary recall, which is, I guess, one of the suppliers, to include additional nutritional and beverage products due to the potential for microbial contamination. And the reason for announcement due to a potential for microbial contamination, including, and then there's two that are not even worth trying to pronounce. And this is the same oat milk that Starbucks has been using. Now, granted, if this was a true, issue that could be affecting millions beyond just like the supplier that I got that oat milk from, which I do know that Starbucks during that time was doing everything they could to get their hands on this oat milk. Like they would go to a grocery store, they would order it beyond what their typical workflow of getting their inventory. It was
Oh,
just
interesting.
it was that big of a shortage, and there was a really high demand for it. So of course, their suppliers, whatever, it could be a completely different situation. But in the event that this is other oat milks that they use came from this same, I don't know, like I know so little about this process, supplier, the people that, make it, whatever it is, there's an issue with the oat milk.
Does it like make you what kind of sick though? Like if it makes you throw up, that's one thing. But if it's like something more serious than that, that would be
So the
of concern.
infection related to these rare um, microbial contaminations, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But the common symptoms of illness could include fever, vomiting, and urinary tract infection. However,
Oh,
vulnerable and immunocompromised populations may be more susceptible to infection. The other one, there's two different ones. The other one is a severe form of food poisoning. It can begin from 6 hours to 2 weeks after eating food that contains this toxin. Symptoms may include double vision, blurred vision, drooping eyelids, slurred speech, difficulty swallowing, and muscle weakness.
what?
And
That sounds like
um,
a stroke.
yeah, not great. And
It sounds awful.
okay, so the root cause analysis indicates that the products did not meet commercial sterility
Yikes.
specifications.
Sterility, probably, I would assume.
Sterility.
I
Okay,
don't know. I
it's
honestly, I'm guessing.
it's bright and early, and all I've had is coffee and no food.
It
So
ain't that early. It's almost 10:30 for you.
no, it's early. It's seven, well, whatever, 8:16 for you. So it's 8:16 for me. Regardless, this could be a huge scandal, not scandal, like a huge issue that
Yeah.
swept under the rug that no one knows about. And
Well,
I
it's been
mean,
pretty quiet. I haven't heard.
even this supplier is one that like you had to wait weeks because they were constantly sold out. So even if
Mm.
like Starbucks has nothing to do with, this Lions Magnus, whatever, um, it says it's a Lions Magnus is a leader in the food industry, produces and markets a wide array of products for global food service and food ingredient channels. So my research prior to this conversation should have been, who does Lions Magnus um, distribute to? Because that could better, you know, answer who is directly affected by this. But this is a brand, and it's clearly not the brand's fault. It's how it was handled after the fact. But this is a brand that's widely used, and
Yeah,
I
reminds me of
have
that
to
Chipotle
imagine,
scandal that happened.
yeah, the lettuce or the meat.
You know what? I do like Chipotle. I also have a beef with Chipotle, but I just saw the other day their lettuce get recalled again. I'm like, why are they having so much? Maybe I heard it's because like they do keep their food all out in the open air and that like exposes it to things. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have so many problems, and I know so many people that have gotten sick from Chipotle. But
Really?
anyway,
Yeah, I
yeah.
feel like it's one of those things when if I get sick from it, I don't even look into it further because I'm like in my head I already know there's probably a decent chance each time that I eat their meat that I'm gonna get sick. But I know before the bigger one with Chipotle that affected like the national um that affected it nationally was more from the like farm that they got their lettuce
Oh.
from. You know what I mean? So it was way before. It was a contamination in grocery stores too. Maybe
Mm,
not
yeah.
nationally, but like at the regional level, there were these outbreaks. So either
Well,
I'm holding on to information that affects a ton of people, and I, I it'll never make its way to mainstream media because I don't know how this stuff works, or we would have known about it and it's only affected like a very small population. But by the sounds of that food company, seems like a lot of people might be affected by this.
I have a little bit of hope just because it sounds like you've been drinking copious amounts of
I
it.
completely stopped with oat milk. Like,
You did, okay.
yeah.
But that's a really loud plane going over me right now.
Well,
Um,
I'll elaborate. Once I started to learn more about the ingredients in oat milk, especially the barista blend that has a ton of different ingredients to make it have the ideal consistency, the the more that I realize this is incredibly bad for my gut health. Like there's gum,
oh,
there's sunflower oil, there's lots of different oils that are really bad. And gut health for me has been a priority. And that could be because of the amount of oat milk or the specific oat milk brand that I was drinking. Now
mm,
I've tried to um, muster up the courage on a weekly basis to buy this thing called oat milk. It's at Whole Foods. It's $6 a pop, but the ingredients are three simple things: Himalayan salt, filtered water, and organic oats. It
wow.
tastes like it sounds,
It doesn't
so
sound
it's not
very
nearly as good. I've
good.
honestly just started going back to drinking a little bit of normal milk. I'm like, if the alternatives aren't going to be
Mm,
healthy for my gut, I might as well just limit my overall milk intake and try just drink what's there that hopefully doesn't have a bunch of bad things in it. Milk
yeah,
is milk is a tough one.
honestly, well, I mean, I would say a majority of people can't drink milk. Like I took a nutrition
Mhm.
class and they said that we're just not supposed to drink milk. Like our bodies are not supposed to ingest it, mostly because a lot of people don't have the enzyme. I think it's called lactase. A lot of people don't have that enzyme to break it down. Some people do. I
Mhm.
feel like I'm the only Asian person I know that can drink milk because
Really?
they said something like 95% of Asian people are lactose intolerant. But
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I went away from milk, well, because I started learning more about the hormones that are in it and
Yeah.
all of the fact that we have this white, beautiful looking milk and it looks nothing like that in its true, most organic state.
Yeah, it's
I'm
well,
like,
yeah.
this seems,
This
too good
seems
to be
wrong.
true. Yeah, this seems problematic. But then also I started not reacting to it. Like I would have to use the restroom right after drinking milk. Just the common
Well, you're probably a little
dairy
bit,
sensitivity, lactose intolerant
yeah.
syndrome.
Well,
So
it's
I
for
act
me.
like I am, but now I'm like, I don't even know what to do.
For me, it's not so much about being intolerant. I just kind of grosses me out. I don't know. Like when I'm drinking, Darren is completely different. He can pour a glass of milk and just drink it straight, and he just loves it. And I think that's so disgusting. I can't even begin, especially because there's just things I've learned about milk that are gross. Like, not only does it come from an udder, like, ew, that's also just gross. I just hate thinking about that when I'm drinking it, like where it started. I just don't like that. And I was watching, I like, I was vegan for a hot second. And I was like watching all these vegan documentaries, and there's, according to the FDA, and it's microscopic, but there's an acceptable amount of pus in milk. There's like,
Hmm.
which, ew, like
Doesn't
why?
seem like something that we would want to consume.
No, not even on a microscopic level.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I just, my issue with milk is not have anything to do with gut health or being lactose intolerant. It just mostly with the thought of it and what's in it and where it came from. So that's my
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't agree with being grossed out of milk coming out of an udder because how other foods are stripped of its original state is a lot worse. But
True.
you saying that you went through the process of being vegan for a bit goes to show that overall the that was just a turn off for you for a while. So
Yeah.
are you back to eating meat? Like what was that process like? I
Oh,
don't even know
no,
if I knew you were.
this was
Okay.
a long time ago. No, you knew me. It was right. I actually met Darren and I was vegan. I was trying my best to be vegan. It's
Okay.
really difficult to be vegan because there are animal products in so many things, like
Hmm.
candy. Gelatin candy has animal products in it. Um, and the other difficult thing is, yes, you can go through the trouble to make all these really cool vegan dishes, and that's great, if especially if you have time to cook and you're into cooking. But if you have like a fast-paced lifestyle, or you don't have time to cook, or you're just looking for something fast, like I was eating just like noodles and tomato sauce so
Hmm.
often because that was just something I knew didn't have any animal products and I could just eat it, didn't have to think about it. And I was actually gaining weight, which I was super upset about because I'm like, oh, I'm going to go vegan and I'm going to lose all this weight because I heard people, you're just eating vegetables and you
And
end up
you're
eating,
overall a healthier, cleaner
yeah,
diet.
but you
Yeah.
end up eating a lot of starch, which,
And well, that's what I was gonna add it too, is a lot of times when you're not you're always there's always some sort of filler that just overall isn't good. But yeah, I my mom growing up was very on top of trying to eat as clean as possible, no processed foods. And I appreciated that effort and I appreciated the way that she fed me, but it's kind of all come full circle now that I've had my experience with trying to eat different ways to be quote unquote healthy. Now I'm circling back to just trying to eliminate as much processed food as I can. But once you start to really think about it, because mm, we're so far out of control of where our food comes from, how it's made, all of these things. I just don't want to drive myself crazy looking at all of the in between the reading in between the lines of all of these
you
things that we
can.
eat.
You can, especially in the US. I mean, to be fair, I feel like I'm biased against our own country. Like, I feel like to be fair, I don't know. Like, I haven't done the research on how we process foods and why our food is more processed than other countries. But I do know that that's an accepted sentiment that people think American food is not as healthy and unprocessed as other parts of the world. Like, for example, I know somebody who has a friend who came from Australia. She came to the US. She didn't change her diet at all. Like, she just was eating the same types of foods, but they were just different brands. They were just American brands. And she gained 15 pounds. She didn't change her diet at all. It was just the switch from Australian to American brands. And I don't know. I don't know if it's because we've tried to make our food processing more efficient. Whatever it is, it's not
As
good. I don't think.
inexpensive as possible. Could
Yeah.
it seems to be the more that I hear those stories of the terrible diets that people have in other parts of the world, but it's not nearly as bad as um, what it is like here.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm interested to see when we go to Italy and France for our honeymoon.
Mm.
What if there's, I'm going to really compare like ingredients and how I feel and all of that while I'm there.
Okay, so question for you, Sophie. Did you watch the um, debut of the prequel of Game of Thrones? It's called House of
House
the
of the
Dragon.
Dragon, absolutely I did. And I have some opinions on it.
I found it very interesting. So I actually didn't watch Game of Thrones,
What?
and I
Are you
only watched
serious?
the last episode
Oh
because
my
I was
God.
in college, and all of my college friends
Mary,
got together for the finale, and I watched the finale. So I saw
what?
all of the tragedy, and I mean, I think
I really disagree with that decision that you made to do that.
yeah,
I really disagree with it.
okay, so I watched this first episode and then I listened to a couple podcasts about it. And I realized, you know what? I think I can acknowledge, well, I've always acknowledged that it's something that I want to watch because it's so highly acclaimed. It's talked about so like with so much praise, and who doesn't want to watch that? But of course, now knowing that the end to Game of Thrones was like horrible, it's
Yeah.
hard to want to go back and watch. Um,
It's so worth it. I
and
would definitely say do it.
and the conversation on the podcast was, the people that kind of felt a little some type of way about the first episode for House of the Dragon. They were saying like, but this is the Game of Thrones writers. Like they are ruthless. There's no happy endings. They will kill your favorite person and it'll be in the most brutal fashion possible.
Yeah, that's true.
It's it's not
But
there's no happy ending. So and I'm like I love a happy ending. I
mhm.
love feeling complete at the end of watching something and not having my heart ripped out of my chest.
Yeah, but that's not I do appreciate a good happy ending, but I also appreciate when it's not I like to be surprised sometimes because if it's always a happy ending, why am I watching it? Like there's nothing new. I'm not going to gain anything from it. And
I
but
mean,
okay.
Top Gun Maverick, for example, no spoilers if we don't want to, but I
Well, people
expected
should
the
have seen it by
worst.
now.
I expected the worst for Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I
And
did too.
what was his it wasn't Rooster. It was what was the name for Miles Teller's character? It wasn't Rooster. It
Well,
was
his dad was Goose, so I
okay,
don't
but
know.
he
I
was
don't.
some sort of bird.
Miles Teller.
Yeah, Miles Teller. So the outcome of that could have been anything. Like
Yeah.
and it was so unpredictable. So there's still a way to have a happy ending and be completely unpredictable.
So, okay. I just want to get into this episode because I do have a lot of opinions on it and I want to make sure we get through it. But
First thing I want to start just put out there, if I choose to keep watching House of the Dragon. I've heard that it actually could, in theory, be kind of cool to watch this first, the prequel, because it
That's
happened
true.
200 years before, and then watch Game of Thrones. So it's not completely out of the question. We'll see how this discussion sways my motivation to keep watching. It also is Sunday
But
nights, and that's football.
I have a feeling though, the only reason I'm watching these prequels is because I am so invested in the Game of Thrones franchise. So I appreciate it. It might be tough for you to appreciate the prequel.
Okay.
Um, but anyways,
I mean, I enjoyed the first episode overall, but okay, let's get into it.
so first, before I analyze it, I just want to talk about my emotional reaction to the episode. So
Specifically, the scene.
specifically the scene, and honestly, we're just going to talk about it. If you haven't seen it, turn off this episode, go watch it, and come back.
Yeah, or just fast forward.
Yeah,
I'll
either
put
one.
timestamps in the description, so just fast forward to a later segment.
Yes. So, in the first episode, the queen is pregnant and the king is very desperate for a son. In the birth scene, all these complications arise. The baby is breech, and they have to make a decision about whether or not they want to save the baby or lose both the mother and the baby, essentially. But saving the baby would mean a C section. And obviously, at that time in Westeros, in this fictional land, there is no anesthesia, there is no operating room. It's your bedroom and a knife. So it's pretty gruesome, the thought of that. And so when that was presented, I was like, oh man, like how could the queen ever choose to do that? Like if I was in that era, there's no way I would be brave enough to choose to have this C-section. Like that sounds awful and terrible and like just kill me. Like I would hate that. And when they actually show what they decided, the king just goes to her bedside and says they're going to take the baby out now, and she's out of it. So she's like, "Oh, okay." And then she realizes that they're going to cut it out of her without her consent. And as soon as she had that realization and that clicked in her head, and she wasn't consulted about this procedure that was about to happen to her, I cannot describe the emotional reaction I had to it. So, like, I guess the best way is to compare it to Darren. So, Darren, I mean, obviously horrified, gruesome. Like he was just like, oh my God, this is terrible and awful.
Tough to watch. And a big part of it too is you kind of touched on it, but of course, the king wanting a son for the purpose of having a rightful heir, and the intention behind the king's decision to choose the life of to make that decision was not rooted in good faith at all. It was like
Yeah,
a very
no.
selfish decision. Continue.
Yeah. And to put, she was probably going to die anyway, but to
Mm-hmm.
put her through
Yeah.
the most painful death possible to
Mm-hmm.
save the son is, again, like without her consent, is just terrible. But
Mm-hmm.
so Darren's reaction was obviously horrified and just disgusted, but it was like I couldn't describe what I was feeling. It felt like an anxiety attack when I was watching this. It was like somebody described it really well. They were like, I've never felt this mixture of wanting to burst out crying and projectile vomit at the same time. It was like
Mm-hmm.
such like every negative emotion and just the feeling of like complete loss of control over your own body. I had told Darren it's like almost like rape, but worse because
Mm-hmm.
it's number one, your husband is choosing to do this to you. Number two, you were not even consulted about this. Number three, there's no dulling the pain at all. It's you feel people just moving around their hands in your body. The whole thing was really disturbing and inhumane and terrible. But that all of that said, so that was my emotional reaction to it. And the internet has had a very similar emotional reaction. And I think a bee just flew into
I
my house.
also, oh no, that's not good. I also had a emotional I okay, let's see. Let me take that back. When I was watching it, I I'm not like the biggest fan of gory entertainment. So it was definitely like a cringe feeling, like, ugh, like I
Mm.
don't want to watch that. Also, reminding myself that, the philosophy I try to carry in life is not to, react off of emotion. So I was trying to look at it from the the perspective of the writers and why this is like really valuable to see this type of, medieval lifestyle and how things were, when no matter what type of no matter what scenario the situation is for childbirth back then, it's going to be awful. But the more that the scene progressed, I definitely was like, is it even worth it? Like, is it even worth watching this? Because I did not enjoy watching that.
Yeah.
I understand that there's, at that time, there's a potential for there to be a greater meaning that like could make it make sense, but it just kind of felt like when there's like a movie and there's just like a brutal scene and it doesn't aid the plot at all.
Yeah.
That's how
Well,
I felt in the moment. Like, what is this going to eventually mean? Because, and I hope I'm not spoiling by the direction you're headed in explaining
no.
it, but in the end, like it didn't even matter because the baby dies. So they both die, and it's like, well, what was the purpose of making
Yeah.
everyone experience that? And yes, it's kind of like facing the reality of what maybe life was like for some people, but like, oh, it just wasn't
Yeah.
worth going through that.
I think, oh my gosh, there's a lot. I'm sorry, there's a lot going on around me.
Is there a
There's a
squirrel
like a
sneeze?
bee, and my cat is climbing the fence and about to go over. But anyway, I'm just gonna let it happen. Um,
Darcy, get back here.
she's really pushing her limits right now. Um, so in my opinion, I agree, and I think a lot of people agree based on what I'm seeing on the internet is just people think it's unnecessary. It's too much disturbing content for what you get in return. It's like there wasn't a need to bring it to that level when they were going to die anyway, and that's what a lot of people are saying. But personally, I do appreciate what their intention was. And what I think their intention was, obviously it's hard to know exactly. But I do think this is kind of a way to I think history is such an important thing. I know it's not history, it's Westeros. It's fictional, but a lot of the things in Westeros are kind of like based in medieval times and how life was during that time. And to me, like history is the best way to pay tribute to people that have suffered in the past and especially women.
Mhm.
Like it's hard to get people to really like even the modern woman me like I can't imagine being a woman back then. Like you have no rights, you're
Mhm.
expected to have a son, and if you don't you're a failure and you might die, but who cares, all that matters is you bear a son. And I think it can be really difficult because we know all these things, right? We know these things, we've learned them in history, they're messed up,
Mhm.
whatever, we've learned about them. And it's hard to really empathize because it is so long ago and life isn't like that anymore. I appreciate them bringing it to that level because it makes you feel some type of way and feel the empathy for that queen to that level that I think people are now, it puts that time of our society into perspective. And it's like, wow, women really had it very rough. And like, they didn't need her consent to do that. They didn't need to chat with her about whether or not she was okay with this.
And the king had the ability in his heart to look at her in the eye and hold her hand through the process.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like, well, she was going to die anyway. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you started it with, you have so much appreciation for the entire franchise, whereas I'm like, I have no idea what the intention is behind it. And from some of the people that are a lot less invested, I hear things like, you know, are they just trying to one up the intensity of this season to what Game of Thrones was? The writer's process is so interesting. I've kind of never thought about it before. I think I think the extent of the writer's process that I've thought of was um I'm just picturing that scene from You, with Joe and one of his victims' brothers, and like he's talking about
Oh.
writing this thing like on a whiteboard, anyways. And then, so beyond that, hopefully that resonated with someone. Stranger Things, which I don't know if I told you, I finished Stranger Things.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What
Oh,
do you
well,
think?
I'll have to give you my
Yeah.
thoughts after if we remember. But um, so the Stranger Things Twitter account, the writers kind of control it, and they talk a lot about, or I guess they show the behind the scenes of what their writers process is like. And it's kind of a reminder, like the writing process goes on as like the show goes on or like season to season, things are being created. It's not like this well thought out story before and then it just takes a long time to execute it. It's like they're episode to episode, season to season, things are changing in their writers process. So
Mhm.
for me, I'm like, is that is that something that I appreciate if they're just trying to get the biggest reaction out of people? And I have no reason to believe that. I'm just saying, like, I want to really appreciate it as you do, whereas for me, I naturally didn't feel that way. I was like, do I just want to put myself through this type of show that evokes so much emotion? And from what I hear, like that little girl can die in the next episode. Like, it's just such a ruthless series that
Yeah,
I don't know what to expect.
I do. I think I know what you mean. It's just like, are they just doing this for, extremity's sake? Like, are they just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make you feel disturbed as much as possible so that they can claim that they did that and they are the most
Yeah.
disturbing
And
series? But
the way you see it and the way that you assume from what you know about the writers, I mean, yeah, that's the best case scenario, that
well,
there's more
that's why I think you
behind it.
definitely need to watch Game of Thrones because yes, it's gory. Yes, there are chopped off heads probably in every episode and you almost become desensitized to it. But the story and the plot and the content that's there is so much more than the gore that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I think is why you put up with it because it's not just a TV show that's gory. There's so much complexity and depth
And
when you really dig into it. But
there's a lot of different perspectives too. Like on Twitter, there's people saying, actually saying that the Game of Thrones writers like are claiming to need to have brought that scene to life because of X, Y, and Z, when it's fiction. And having like it's kind of an example that's not doesn't have the most grounds, but like it's not realistic for all of these people to have like platinum blonde hair.
yeah, and that's
So
the
it's
thing
like
is but
they
that
pride themselves
situation,
on the realism to it,
yeah.
how realistic it is, yet there's so many parts that aren't. So it's like some people are almost wanting them, if they're going to make that argument, to like really prove it in every area. And that's just a different perspective. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily agreeing with that.
No, I know. And that's the thing is to me, like the things that are made up, my dad has the same argument. He's like, why would I watch a show that has dragons in it? That's dumb. And I'm like, it's those are
Especially
those
when the dragons don't live.
I know. But to me, like those details are so irrelevant. Like those are the things that make it fantastical and a fantasy world, but everything else in it is accurate. Like honestly, that situation that queen was put in, obviously I didn't live back then, so I don't know. I can't say that it was exactly what it was like in medieval times, but I would imagine, yeah, like that happened. And so for me, I just appreciate them making us feel that level of emotion for that scene, because I don't think people really appreciate everything that many different groups, but especially women, went through at that
Mhm.
time. And so I just think that it's almost a way to pay respect to the women of that time, because we don't ever put ourselves in a situation to even think about what they went through. So they forced us to feel bad and sympathetic and empathetic and disgusted and horrified and all of these emotions for her, because it's
Yeah,
awful. And so I just appreciate that, because I just feel like it's
exactly.
that is realistic to what happened back then.
Yeah, there is a beauty to that, and I've experienced that in other shows to where
Well,
you you see it, and yeah, you're forced to look at
yeah.
the
And you're
growth, like,
forced.
oh, I and you're forced to look at the things about our history that absolutely suck.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a, there's some movies and shows about the reality of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately, after watching House of the Dragon episode 1, I was explaining to Evan how, like, there's these things that are reality, that are important to look back at and
Yeah.
understand and know, but it's awful to see. Like, I do not
Yeah.
want to watch, I just don't want to watch it, not because I'm too sensitive to watch it. I guess it's just, it hurts so my heart, like, it's so terrible. It's not something I am excited to watch, but of course I'll appreciate when it's there. But I also didn't really understand the intentions of House of the Dragon, so I'm like,
Well, that's what
do
I
they
at
have
least
that, what you're saying? Then I can really see the
I'm
beauty.
hoping, from what I've gathered from the articles I read, I'm pretty sure that's the intention. If it
Okay.
wasn't, and if it was just to be gory, then that makes me upset.
But I
But
mean,
I
either
think,
way, we can also just interpret it how we want. So I
yeah.
like that perspective. I
But
just
I agree
It
though
was
that
tough.
yeah, it's tough, and but it is important to remember, because I feel like in order to be a truly empathetic individual, you need to like fully understand what every marginalized group went through in our history. And so, just the last thing I read about this episode was they actually did screen this episode to like a lot of women before they aired it.
Okay.
And it was just interesting. The sentiment across the unanimous sentiment of all the women was that it that it was fine, and that honestly it wasn't gory enough to be realistic to
Yeah,
what
I
would have
mean,
happened.
that when you were explaining, like, when I was putting myself in the thought of, like, really what medicine was like back in the day, and looking back and appreciating what used to be, I was like, I mean, a red splattered bed is, I'm sure, a lot less
Yeah, a lot less.
insane.
Mhm. It probably would have been way worse. And even that was unbearable.
Hmm.
So I'm glad they didn't take it farther, honestly, because I don't know if I could have handled it. But that's what we have
Yeah,
to
if
think.
that's what
That
you're
was
trying to accomplish, is to recreate what with that situation, then yeah, then let's critique how unrealistic it was. But overall, without considering that, I stand by the phases and emotion that I felt throughout this
yeah.
process. It's always fun to watch something that makes you talk.
Yeah.
It's more fun to talk about it with you than it is to talk about with my male coworkers, my
Yeah.
boyfriend. Like, it's just a little bit of a different tune.
Yeah.
So I want to quickly give you my thoughts on Stranger Things. You are 100% right. Once I faced you, what it was, it 2 episodes back, I talked to Sophie about how I was starting Stranger Things. Once I saw episode 1, what the scariest thing was, which at that time it was just the Demogorgon in the
Yeah.
first season.
Yeah.
Once I saw what it was, because there was at the time when I told you it's scary, I had no idea what was in the upside down. So
Oh.
my mind was like, am I going to be terrified? Now, once I saw it in its truest form, the quote unquote monster, then the fear went away and I was able to appreciate it more. I actually went into it knowing how highly everyone talked about it, and I was very critical throughout the process.
Really?
Um, the season, what? So it's 4 seasons, right?
I think so.
Total, and then
Yes.
season 4 was volume 1 and 2, or
Yeah.
is it 5 seasons? Shoot,
No,
shoot.
I think it's 4.
Well, the second to last season,
Yeah.
did not like it at all. Like
No, I didn't like it either.
I really didn't enjoy the acting. I thought I can understand the tone of it. They really brought back the vibe of that time and the quirkiness of it, but it didn't resonate with me. And then there was that one episode that was just kind of a standalone, like introduced a different character that existed back. But the season finale was crazy. There were, well, I wouldn't even say just the last
Of
episode, but
season
like,
3 or 4?
so I'm talking about the end of the
Okay.
of it so far.
Mm-hmm.
So 4, I guess that would be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, there was a couple curveballs there that I didn't anticipate. Hopper got very attractive, which I didn't expect.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
I was like, okay,
None
I
of us
can
saw
get
it
behind
coming.
him and Joyce now. Um,
Yeah.
I I had, and also a big part of it was there were a lot of characters that I didn't really care for. I
Mm.
didn't care for Dustin for
Oh, come
90%
on.
of the
He's
show.
so
No,
funny.
he was so annoying sometimes. Like the way that
Yeah.
he was just trying to make this Demogorgon his pet, and it really affected everyone. And it's like these kids, I know that they're kids, but Elle is like also a kid. She shouldn't be in these situations. Max, I didn't really care for her attitude at first. And this makes me sound so critical and judgmental, but it's
Yeah.
just the feelings I got from the characters at that time. And I
Yeah.
wanted to like them because it would make it so much better. It wasn't until really closer to the, like, definitely the last season where I started to like Max. Um,
Yeah.
there were just I was always mega stan of Elle and Mike. Mike, I love Sophie. Do you
I
have a
love
character
Mike.
that you love? Like, because Mike
Yeah.
is the most ideal kid in, like,
Yeah.
in my imagination.
I do. Yeah. Honestly, I don't like, I like Elle, but she's so awkward that I have a hard time like emotionally connecting to her.
See,
Um,
I disagree. I think she's
what?
so cute and sweet, and the way she talks, like, and we know so much about her childhood experiences.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I needed more from her than we got.
I just can't like, because I think I try to think of them if like they were real people. I feel like I'd be annoyed with her.
With Elle.
With her with like not knowing anything. I'd be like, oh my God. But whatever, I guess I'm not very
But
empathetic
who
towards
did you love? Like who was bringing out like the most emotion in you? Maybe hate. Like what was that character for you? Because
um
most consistently throughout it was hands down Mike and Elle.
I like Lucas and Mike. Those are
Okay.
my two favorite. And then, yeah, as you said in season, well, and then Hopper. I love Hopper. I love him.
See, and I went through a roller coaster with him too because I loved him at first because he was this like badass cop. And then
Mm,
he started really showing his past traumas of losing his kid,
yeah. Mhm.
and the way that he treated Elle, I really grew frustrated with him. The way that he handled his relationship. He just had a lot of problem like baggage, which is fine,
Yeah.
but I wanted someone to be perfect, and the most perfect there was yeah,
Yeah, Mike.
anyways.
Mike is good, but and then Joyce just like also irritates me. She's so manic. It's like she just
Who?
Joyce, she stresses
Oh,
me out. She's like
yeah.
she seems like she's
She
gonna fly off the handle every 5 seconds. So I just can't with her.
I
But
did overall, my last comment is I did enjoy how at when it was all said and done at the end of every season or at the peak of every moment in confronting the upside down, they all were in different settings and somehow worked together. Like they
yeah.
work in completely different parts of the process. You know, like for example, like learning German between Steve and Robin, and then Dustin, and then like they were just all in different points of it, but they all helped each other, which I
Yeah.
actually appreciated. I didn't think was like unrealistic because sometimes I struggle with something that's just way too unrealistic. But
Mhm. Mhm.
overall, yeah. So I'm happy I stuck with it. That was a great show. Um, so real quick, I just wanted to touch on there were two kind of big headlines that came out of the week. One was Jeanette McCurdy, who I assume was a very big Nickelodeon figure for you as well.
Yeah.
She came out with a book called I'm Happy My Mom Died, or I forget exactly what it was called, but
Mhm.
to that same sentiment. And it was talking about her abusive home and also the abuse she faced at Nickelodeon. And um, overall, like I think everyone listening should definitely go. I haven't read the memoir, but I
Yeah.
definitely appreciated the conversation she had about it and how she was basically the only one who didn't accept a payout to keep quiet about everything that happened at Nickelodeon. So she was able to eventually do this. And I think, everyone has their own um backgrounds, obviously, but I can relate more to coming from a bit of a toxic household and maybe a toxic relationship with my mom at certain points in my life. And, to see these major network personalities like talk to her about like, and confront the issue that a lot of people had, like obey thy mother and thy father. Like the idea of outright talking about how you're traumatized from your parents and how it makes you like not love them, I
Mhm.
thought was a very powerful
Yeah.
conversation for a lot of people to see happen and then also to kind of reflect on yourself. But throughout that process, like Nickelodeon still no comment. Like all of these things are just
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
these there's such a big responsibility with child actors and young individuals in this industry of entertainment. Now influencers with like social media, and it's like we have to like in our society make that stop with our generation. Hopefully, like and
One
not.
would hope.
It's very difficult though because you can't like not have kids make decisions for themselves or pursue what they perceive to be their dreams at that time. So it's just being a good leader to those people while also trying to make money, while trying
Yeah.
to, sell a product. Um, and in a lot of ways to do that, you have to exploit the individuals. If you don't have anything to add on that, we can also quickly touch on the Vanessa Bryant lawsuit.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes, she sued the LA, well, she sued LA County, um, more in relation to the LA firefighter department. Is that right? Firefighter department?
LA, probably LA County Fire Department.
Fire
Yeah,
department.
I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
And just with the how the situation was handled when the helicopter crash happened, the responders on the scene taking pictures, and she essentially in that process um, sued for what I believe was 20 million to start. Actually, don't think she even put a specified dollar amount upon going about this lawsuit and just left it up to the jury. So essentially, like just some of the details, it wasn't about the crash itself, it was just what happened afterward. And Bryant and her party accused the sheriffs and fire department employees of sharing and displaying gruesome photos of their deceased loved ones remains from the crash scene without having legitimate business or reason to do so. And after an 11-day trial, which is so short after having experienced the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, in my, non-legal perspective, the jury found it to be a violation of their constitutional rights. Of course, Vanessa is going to donate all the money to the Mamba and Mambacita Foundation for Gianna Bryant and Kobe Bryant. And yeah, I would have loved, not for entertainment purposes, but just like for all of the ethical conversations that would have had to have been had in the courtroom regarding this situation. Because anytime, you know, it's tough, right? Like to sue any first responder or like
Yeah.
government organization, right? That's
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that have happened that a lawsuit doesn't come out of it. So for her to be found in the right in this situation is very interesting, but it's kind of hard to deny. I think if they had the sheriff and fire department lawyers had like a pristine legal argument, they would have gotten out of it just based off of like how they would have justified their protocol and what exactly happened. But because there were some of the some of the what is it called, the deposition later impeached when it went to trial, it was kind of hard not to see the verdict going that way. One was the reasoning behind why there was a a order, I guess, on behalf of the sheriff department for all of the employees to delete the photos, because once they're taken, it's a crime to delete evidence. So they had
Yeah.
to come up with an answer for that. They also had to come up with an answer as to why they well, and what went into that was they were saying that the policy is that they're not supposed to, but since it was such an unprecedented situation, they had media organizations and the community like
Yeah.
attacking them for this information. They thought it was best in that moment to delete the information for the hope that it wouldn't get out. But it's
Mhm.
like, well, policy is policy. You're not supposed to delete evidence regardless of the reasoning, and the photo shouldn't have been taken in the first place. And there's always that thought in Vanessa's head that's going to be, and all of the parents' heads, the family members, is one day the kids are going to grow up and they're going to see those photos if they do still exist, and they
Which I'm
are
sure they do. I'm
they
sure they do.
become public. Yeah, I mean, they were able. One example was like one of the employees showed a bartender, like just little things like that, that it's insane what word of mouth can do. So anyway, she wins that legal battle, and hopefully that can help put some of those family members at some sort of peace. And really, I think the biggest thing for her was just accountability. Like you got to be held
Yeah.
accountable if you don't handle that situation. And she's doing it on behalf of other family members that were affected, not just for herself. But she just
Yeah.
has the most money and the biggest voice.
Yeah. And God, thinking 2020 was a heck of a year, man. Like that was the first thing I remember from 2020. And
Our
it's
president was in an impeachment trial. COVID, Kobe, like
no,
what a
like
year. And I at that time I was a news anchor.
a
Like
lot
what?
going on. Well, and um I was at the time um working with somebody who knew, like, was actually a relative of Vanessa's home organizer.
Oh, okay.
So, like my old VP's niece, I think, like organizes her, or it was like her goddaughter or whatever, organizes Vanessa's house. And they were in the middle of reorganizing Kobe's office and Gianna's bedroom. So
Dang,
it was,
it's crazy, like the butterfly or the effect that it has
well, and
and all the
Vanessa,
things.
like, it was tough because Vanessa was just like, I don't want you, to touch their rooms. Like, I just want to leave it the way that they were. Like, I don't want to reorganize it anymore. So, yeah, it's just like that was just, I remember exactly where I was when I heard about the news and how it affected me. And, the fact that this is still having to be put to bed. I can't even imagine for their family, like how long it
Mm-mm.
feels.
It is unbelievable. Very, very shocking moment in our recent couple of years. Very sad. And yeah, like you said, it's pretty unbelievable that they're still having to deal with the aftermath of all of this. But
Yeah.
um, so I think I mean, there's a lot of things going on this week, but that kind of hits most of the points that we wanted to bring up. Um, Last but not least, just a quick update on the wedding. I'll give a brief update on how the bachelorette process is going, and I'm so hyped. But
You're
first,
killing it on the planning.
but
You
first,
are.
what's the last, few things that are kind of stressing you out in terms of deadlines?
Well, so now that the engagement party's over, we're less than 8 months away from the wedding, which I don't know how that happened. That just came up real quick. I mean, last time I was saying, oh, it's like 16 months away, it's a year away. And now we're like less than 8 months, which is not a lot of time in the wedding world. So I still have to get a DJ, I still have to get a florist, and I still have to find a day of coordinator. And these are all
Okay.
things, they're not super expensive, but they're definitely can be expensive. So you have to kind of do some research to find somebody that's reasonable. And we're already pretty much over budget. Um, we will be over budget. That's just going to be a fact of life.
That's a simple
Um,
fact.
just a simple fact that I've accepted and haven't allowed to stress me out. I had aimed to send out save the dates in August. It's August 27th. Haven't sent them out.
Oh,
Um,
gosh darn it.
gosh dang it. But you know what? I'm okay with sending them out a little bit later. Um, for the simple fact that if we don't give people 100% perfect notice, then maybe we'll save some money. But you know what? Obviously, everyone we invite, we want to come. It's just so
It's just
expensive.
not that simple.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's not
no,
that
I get it.
simple.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately for you, you and Darren are such amazing people that everyone's going to drop everything they have going on. So good luck with that.
Well, and then yeah, so it's just booking the last couple things and then yeah, it just the timeline just goes so fast. I did not realize how quickly this would creep up on me.
I
So,
mean, it's basically fall. So yeah,
yeah.
it's getting
Yeah,
there.
and I still
We're
have to get my dress altered and everything, so
two and a
we're moving.
half-ish seasons away. So it's creeping up. So in terms of the bachelorette party, Scottsdale,
Here we
uh,
go.
um, hurrah. And there's a decent amount of air. Like I've really enjoyed looking on TikTok because a lot of people invested in property in Scottsdale to create these gorgeous Airbnbs.
Mhm.
But there's a big difference between like a $800 a night Airbnb, or not really in terms of looks wise, but like, and some of them that are almost $2,000 a night. So it's
Wow.
kind of figuring that out because there are some really great places that are reasonably priced, but then the ones that are like, oh, I really wish we could go there. It would cost an arm and a leg, and no one's trying to do that. So that's one thing that I'm doing some research on, and then I've officially reached out to 92% of the party. Well, I've reached out technically to everyone, but some of the people I talked to at the engagement party, I need to send a follow up so they accept the invitation.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, everyone knows, everyone's a part of this app I am using called The Batch. And
Yeah.
it'll just kind of get everyone together, and I'll be able to give like general updates, but some of the stuff, it'll be a lot of, maybe not a lot of, but some one-on-ones with specific people that can get an idea of what the people they're close to are thinking, and things like that. So I've found a couple websites that have some amazing like decor and all of these batch inspired
Ooh.
things. So it's really just being able to plan this far out in the future. You can look for some really good stuff to make the experience look and feel very exciting. And yeah, that's kind of the brunt of it. The
Well, you guys, Mary has been killing it. She all of a sudden, like I went and I registered for this app, and everybody that I told her I was inviting was already on it. And Mary had not contacted me for their phone number. So I was like, how I was
I
like,
told
how
Sophie, I was like, I want to be as self-sufficient as possible in this process because I really am only like somewhat familiar with a couple people, but I'm not going to let that stop me because the point is to not have you spoon feed me everything. I'm more than capable.
well,
So.
you're killing it. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I didn't even have to tell her. I literally just told Mary when we want it, where we want it, and the people we want. And it's all being handled. So I'm
I
just
mean,
very impressed.
it was perfect when you were at your nail appointment. You let all the thoughts rattle off, and I was like, noted, noted, noted. But I will say, the first challenge that will rise is deciding on an Airbnb, and then not challenge, but like earlier you can buy an Airbnb, the better. So it's like, wanting that. I think I'll say it right now. Mental deadline will be like mid-October to having it booked.
Yeah.
So that would be, I mean, like obviously, probably even by last month would have been most ideal. But at this point, having just gotten everyone in one space, that'll be the goal. But
Yes.
you and I both have some tasks and amidst the busy work schedule. So lots
Yeah.
of people
So,
can understand the realities of that.
yeah, it's a lot going on, but it's all good. And, somebody told me the other day, no matter what, despite all the stress, you will be married by the end of it. And that's what matters.
Cheers to that. That's what's
Yeah.
most important. Well,
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk again in a couple weeks. We've had a crazy little last stretch of the summer in terms of recording, but lots of love. Great to talk to you. And I need to go stuff my face into food now.
Yes. Stuff it. Send me lots of pictures of the food. I'm very curious
Oh, it's
to.
going to be a wide range. It's going to be crazy. I'm going off. We've got to end the summer with a bang. But that's it for the Processing Podcast. Thank you, everyone, to listening. And make sure to listen to last week's episode if you haven't already. And join us in the coming weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.